Kerplow. Right on. Back. GND 13. And I'm excited. Super stoked for our next guest. Just a regular, everyday Sasky boy just climbing the corporate ladder downtown. We have the the brand new, not brand new anymore, but the new president CEO, Birchcliff Energy, Chris Carlsen. Welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot for having us. Congrats on number 13.
Yeah, lucky 13.
Flying. Yeah, let's hope so.
They are flying. Yeah, I do love doing this and like spreading the word and chatting with good guys and good people and just learning new things and of course educating anybody that might be interested in our industry. Kind of like in Birchcliff Energy. For why don't we explain to people what Birchcliff is Energy and
go from there.
What it's all about? Yeah.
Sure. So Birchcliff Energy, we're an intermediate size oil and gas producer. We're about 80% natural gas, and we're focused up north of Grand Prairie. All our assets are in Alberta, sort of just near Dawson Creek, if you know where that is. But all
Dawson
in the
Creek, BC.
Yeah, Dawson Creek, BC. But we're all on the Alberta side. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So 80% nat gas. So we're certainly focused on that, and I think there's been a bunch of foundations of the company over the years that I'm sure we'll get into today. But we built the company, I'd say, since 2004 is when it really started being incorporated. In 2005, the company went public. I joined in 2008, so I've been there actually quite a long time, 15 years.
Yeah.
But, the foundation of owning and controlling and growth by the drill bit has certainly been the foundation of the company to get it from essentially a small acquisition in 2004, 2005 to, almost 80,000 barrels a day to where it is today. So live in that intermediate space.
Yeah.
And
put yourself out.
I think one of the core foundations of our company, and this maybe ties to Calgary as well, but it's just all about the people. We've got such good people here in Alberta, and we got a bunch of good people in our office downtown Calgary. We've got about 140 downtown Calgary. We got about 80 up in the field as well that are employees that work for us on all the operations, and that's really what keeps everything ticking. So we've got a great family, if you will, as we call it, the Birchcliff family, running things, and that's really one of the heart and souls of what's made the company successful.
Yeah. Well, you guys are definitely one of the darlings of the industry for sure. A lot of people follow you closely. Like you say, intermediate. I mean, it sounds awfully big to be considered an intermediate, right? But that is where you guys sit. But let's go through maybe your journey on getting to where you're at, and then of course we can talk company and whatever. Hey, if we get off the rails, love it.
Sure.
Let's do that.
Yeah, get into a couple of rabbit holes.
Yeah. Let's go down the rabbit hole. So, so where'd you grow up? You grew up in Saskatchewan.
I grew up in Saskatchewan, you bet. Right in Saskatoon. Just on the outside of Saskatoon there.
Awesome.
So
I love that city.
Yeah. Oh, it's a beautiful city.
Yeah.
So my parents moved here about 10 years ago, and I haven't been back for a little while. I flew in there once, saw some friends. We went up fishing in northern Saskatchewan here last year and stuff.
Where'd you go?
We went up to L'Orange and then did a float plane into a remote area.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. Great Black Bear Lake. So it was pretty unreal.
I'm a Tobin Lake guy.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's far enough. But you get,
I'm saying that jokingly. We did my buddy James Colopy. James Colopy.
Yeah, oh yeah.
He's a beauty of all beauties. We did we did a stag there, and it was like fins and skins. So we did like
that sounds
fishing, poker, and golf, and it was all combined. And so Tobin Lake is a famous walleye spot. Yeah. I literally did not get one bite.
No?
Oh, nothing.
Oh, man.
And some guys slayed it. I mean, I got absolutely destroyed all weekend. It was a fantastic weekend, but I got nothing. No fish.
We did pretty good on the pike. We did pretty good on the walleye as well. So I'd say it was pretty successful. There's no... It was pretty funny. So I was traveling. We had a conference in New York, sort of on the Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'd flown out there, New York. Yeah. The conference was down right Times Square, full on chaos, sirens, full bore. Come back that I think it was probably the Wednesday night, and then we fly to Saskatoon the next day, and then up in the middle of nowhere, and you've got nothing. Like
that's just one
barely
culture.
It's just too extreme. So it gives you some perspective for sure when you go to the metropolis like New York and then head back up to northern Saskatchewan where you got nothing. But the fishing was great when we were up there. Lots of pike, lots of walleye. I mean, you had to take your 5 of diamonds out of the water if you didn't want to get a bite.
That's right. Yeah.
So here we go. But so we grew up in Saskatoon. and I went to school there, did university there, took engineering.
Yeah, took engineering. Okay.
Yeah, and you know what? I sort of look back on that and talked to my parents about that too. It's like, you know, my dad wasn't an engineer. He was a microbiologist, so he was a smart guy, did a PhD in microbiology.
Oh, wow.
Very successful cancer researcher, and then became the VP of cancer research for sort of the cancer agency there. So sort of total different path, government.
Wow, I had no idea.
That sort of stuff, yeah.
There you go. I was fully expecting, you know, this podcast would be, when you start chatting about, you know, my parents in Sask, I was thinking, yeah, my dad had 5 sections of land, and he farmed, and my mom was a teacher or whatever. But wow, incredible.
Yeah, so he took, he was, you know, did all his schooling, and I was actually born in Baltimore. When he was down there finishing his PhD, and then they actually chose Saskatoon. Funny enough, story. We're on a tangent here again.
No, it's great.
But
awesome.
So he was doing his PhD down in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And I was born down there, and he had just finished. Like I was probably 3 months old, and he had just finished up. And they're like, okay, well, you know, where's next? Now I'm going to get a job. We have a kid now, so he was on that train. Yeah. And he had an offer with I think it was University of Victoria. One with the University of Saskatchewan, and one back where he was living and met my mom in Toronto, so U of T. And U of S was the one that would give him an actual salary. The other ones were, hey, you have to write a grant basis, and the government then potentially would fund you if your grant was successful for your research project and all that. He's like, wow, I have got a young kid now. I guess I'm going to where the fixed salary is, which is Saskatchewan. So it's sort of get paid out of a roadmap. That's where we ended up, and it was a great spot growing up there, as you know. Saskatchewan's always been you know, you're just down to the salt of the earth. Great people, great town. Not too big, not too small. So all the amenities, and I sort of just randomly was interested in math and science, so sort of just went in that direction. Applied for commerce. I actually didn't get into commerce. Yeah. So I chose engineering, and then just like similar to you and others, like you don't want to fail. No. Whatever you're doing, you have at her, and that sort of hard work, don't want to fail, and ended up going through engineering, and it was a great experience. And
I guess, and then in growing up, what did you do in your town? Hockey guy? Same sports?
Yeah, usually hockey. Yeah. Did a lot of hockey, a little bit of soccer. Yeah, myself and a lot of my buddies were doing. So
you're still ripping around on the ice.
Yeah, still love to play hockey, and to be honest, that's one of the things that just clears the mind. And I think that's important. Whatever it is for each their own. But for me, it's when you're on the ice and you're going to the locker room and on the ice, you can clear everything out of the mind for that hour and a half, and I think that helps. You know, when everyone's got serious things going on and work going on and just a bunch of things bubbling in your mind. To have that sort of clarifying hour and a half where you think about nothing else.
Got to recharge.
I think it's great.
I like to whittle wood and knit sweaters.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's right up your alley.
Hockey and golf. I got hardcore into golf. Last year was the most I've ever golfed, which was 52 rounds or something. And that.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. But now I got like this tennis elbow or something going on. I don't know. Old,
it's called getting old.
Going to be 50. I was just talking with another buddy this morning about things we got to do for our joints and how we learned it with just body weight now and no strength and just all stretching and stuff.
Yeah. But I think that's the first place I met you. Probably was trying to chase you around on the Rocky Mountain Hockey League.
On the ice, the Rocky. Yeah, Rocky Mountain Petroleum Hockey League. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. That is a high-end, high-paced league. Like, there's a lot of pros in there now. Yeah. It's fast. Okay, so, Sasky, and then, so you took your schooling, and so you did your engineering, chemical engineering. Yep. Right? Yep. And so 4 years, and then, where'd you head off after that? What happened after you finished your schooling?
Yeah, so probably so I took 5 years because I wanted to play hockey and slow it down a little bit. Yep. And so in year 3 or 4, I can't remember which one, but I was working one summer I was building golf courses, putting irrigation in, and then the next one we were delivering some shingles and doing those sorts of things. And I had a friend through school who was like, well, I was just in Medicine Hat, and I got a job with Esso. I'm like, oh, okay, how did you get that? And he's like, well, through the student center. And so the following year, then I'm like, well, that's great. I'm going to apply and see if I can get into the oil sector. I knew nothing about it. My family knew nothing about it. Okay. And so I ended up getting a summer job with Canadian Petroleum out of Brooks. And so it was a field operating position, and that's really what got me into the energy sector right off the bat. And I, again, knowing nothing about it, probably my first day, get in with the superintendent. I can't remember his name, but back then they had.
We'll find him.
Yeah, exactly. Back then they had Crown Victorias for all superintendents. So these big cars, these big
big gigantic
boats. Yeah, you're just
boats
floating around and on the gravel roads and such. All the operators obviously had trucks, but he and I tour. I can't remember if there's one other summer student in the back. Maybe there was, but he's driving past. He's like, "This is an oil battery, okay? And here's one of the oil satellites." Like what is this? What the heck is going on here? Yeah. This is one of our big gas plants. I'm like, okay, so are we making gasoline here, or what's going on? But there's so many acronyms and so much technology going on there. I just had no idea from the onset, coming from Saskatchewan into Alberta and into the sector, and that really just piqued my interest that summer of field operating, touching the valves, understanding what everyone out in the field's going through all the time, and the troubleshooting. Like, that's really where you start to learn is, hey, everything's running. Okay, that's great. But the real value here is in the troubleshooting and fixing things and getting things back on production if it's too hot or too cold or whatever. So I did that for a summer, learned a ton, and then got invited back in my final year, this time out of Drumheller. And so did another sort of summer shift in Drumheller, and then got hired on full-time with Pan Canadian out of Brooks.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that was in 2000.
Well, the sector is really a world of acronyms and its own special lingo. And it's kind of surprising that you, being in Saskatoon, that you wouldn't know much about the sector, but I guess it was busier, really. That southeast corner of Saskatchewan is really where, I mean, it still is the bulk. I mean, you've got a lot more in that Viking play in the southwest Sask. But it's interesting that it wasn't really kind of on your radar at the time. Yeah. Now you're a young kid, but
yeah, that's just it. You're sort of, maybe when you're driving through, different towns, you see a few pump jacks here and there, but you just don't have any idea of, the scale and all the economics and how things actually work. You just don't have any idea. You're sort of focused on, okay, I'm focused on school, I'm focused on hockey, fun, if you will, right? So
Sure.
So it's just a different. Yeah, it's totally different.
So did you enjoy?
Oh, I loved it.
You were hooked
it
right away.
was the best thing. And again, with the people were a big part of it too. I had some great people to learn from out there. And one of the things too, if you're eager in anything, like I would spend time out there just following the pipes. Like, okay, there's pipes going everywhere.
Where's this going?
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this has got to be gas. So follow that loop. Okay, this is oil. So oil, let's see where that goes. Oh, it goes into here, and then it goes into a exchanger. Okay, we learned about those in school, and you can't really see the insides of anything, so you sort of have to take it away and go, okay, well, I wonder what the inside of that looks like, and then you sort of just, your own curiosity gets you, and you're full on. So I really learned a lot, and
did you
appreciate the operations?
You appreciate the operations.
Oh, yeah.
So did you feel like, I mean, you took your engineering. Did you feel like maybe you were, like, did it ground you by doing that? Like, because you came out, you got this big engineering degree, you get the ring on your finger now, and then you're working from a field level. Was it kind of like a humbling experience for you, do you think? Or?
I think it's a reality.
This is just reality.
Yeah, for me, it was putting textbooks into reality. And what really matters, right? Because, the engineering is great, but you probably learn a ton of different things that, depending on where you're at, maybe you don't use, right? Like, triple integrals and some of these things that, maybe that applies to certain areas for sure of engineering, but it's, in that sector, not necessarily as much. The foundational principles are there, then you can really explore it and try and understand it. And I think, maybe not grounding, but just reality, like how things actually work. It just really solidified in your mind when you learn something in the textbook, or you learn something on paper, and then being able to go and see how it actually runs and works and
putting it together.
Yeah, so it was really good. And then I moved into Calgary when Pan Canadian and AEC merged. They formed in Canada.
Oh yeah, right.
And so they wanted.
What was AEC? Sorry, I don't remember.
Alberta Energy Company.
Oh, Alberta Energy Company.
Alberta Energy Company, Pan Canadian merged to form in Canada. This would have been 2002, something like that. Then they wanted all field engineers into Calgary. And that was really, there's a few different ways of running a company. You can have field engineers out in the field, and or production engineers out in the field. They interact with daily operations, but it's maybe a little bit dislocated to get that production engineering information back into the city where the development engineers are, the drilling engineers, the geologists, development, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So in Canada's motto was more, let's get the production engineer back in Calgary with the team and make field trips and converse, you know, a little more from the phone or whatever.
Get that proper flow of communication.
Yeah, it was just a different mentality of a team structure versus, it's a team, but the production
broken up.
Yeah, exactly. So I moved to Calgary 2002, late 2002.
And so did you, at that time, I think maybe we'll tie this in later, but on your that current path, did you feel like did you have aspirations of, hey, I want to get in and manage, or you just wanted to learn and take it all in like through a fire hose? How did you feel?
Bingo.
That was it.
Yeah. It was all
Just
about more learning, more fire hose. I'd say the other thing was responsibility. Like the harder you worked, you know, in Canada in those days, you could get more responsibility. It's like, this person's willing to take on production, great. Maybe they can do some completion stuff or some downhole stuff. And so you just continue to grow your knowledge level.
Grow that big mind.
Yeah. I think you tried to, and they were giving you more opportunity and more responsibility as you went. So it wasn't really, wasn't really thinking about any of that other than you know, having a good time, playing some hockey. Really enjoyed the work environment. Really enjoyed the people I worked with as well, and I think that was a big part of it.
That was a big part. Yeah. So you gain. It's really what we call serving your time in the trenches, so to speak, right? Like just head down and giver.
Yeah,
so
and I think
right?
you don't. You know, I think another thing that's important too is not to have some fixed time horizon in your mind either of certain things, right? Like if you want, I want to do exactly a year and a half in this position, and 2 years in this position, and sort of try and make a exact path. I never really had an exact path. I just knew I enjoyed this, and then I went from production to development engineering, and then leading people eventually always crossed my mind over a long time. I really enjoyed talking to people, interacting, those sorts of things, but I don't think I had any aspirations too grandiose, certainly at that time.
No, you weren't chasing the big, you weren't trying to climb the ladder. And
no,
I was a lot of the same, similar, of course, not an engineer, but when I got into Akita drilling, and I've mentioned them a few times, that was my first foray into the energy sector, and same thing. I just learn through a fire hose and just loving every second of it, and I just wanted to be good at what I did, which was just selling contracts for drilling rigs, which is no small feat.
Yeah,
knowing nothing in the early days, and then I didn't really start getting aspirations probably until I want to say 5 or 6 years. You see some buddies making moves, different world than yours for sure, but sales. I followed a guy who had said, that comes from with me, and we can probably make you the manager, and you can run Canadian division, and more responsibility. I felt like I was ready. I was actually offered to leave. That just reminded me. I was actually offered to leave probably 3 years in to go and manage at another company, and I just actually politely declined.
Yeah,
like I didn't feel ready. I just didn't feel ready for that role, and I think they maybe thought I was better than what I actually was. I just didn't feel confident yet, right? So I think it's important. Yeah. So after Pan Canadian, then so did you leave on your own terms, or what happened there?
Yeah. So what happened? And funny enough, I was able to convince my girlfriend that I had met in university, Jill, to move to Brooks with me.
Oh, no way.
That's not the easiest.
Well, you sold her on the packing plant.
Oh yeah.
We can go hang out.
Right there.
Free meat right here.
There's a McDonald's.
McD's.
It's a big spot. So anyway, so then we both moved from Brooks to Calgary in 2002.
Okay.
And so then I worked in Canada again, trying to just soak up more and more till 2005. And then, one of the things people say, golf and hockey and some of these team sports, I had met some really interesting individuals through hockey.
Yeah, sure.
That were older guys that were established in their careers, and a couple of them were going to start up a company in 2005. And so a senior guy named Kerry Lyons and a geologist named Dave Shalanka. The two of them, one was an engineer, one was a geologist, and they had ran companies before. So I'm like, they're looking for a young engineer. We also had a CFO and then a younger geologist. So it sort of got a foray into the junior oil and gas sector in 2005 with one of these startups, and that went really well from 2005 to 2008. Sold that to Harvest, and that was called Greenfield Exploration.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So again, that's, ton of different learnings there, and that's where I first sort of got exposed to a little bit of the drilling side and the completion side through consultants. We had
consultants.
we had Magus, and we had Dumanowski at
Jason. So you're talking Steve and Jeff Magus, or you had Steve
the Magus? Yeah. We had
Magus Engineering.
Boswell, Magus Engineering,
yeah, and Boswell was there, Jeff. Yeah.
So we had Magus Engineering helping us out, and where was Dumanowski? I can't remember
Bernie or Jason?
Jason.
Well, he's West Rock now.
Yeah, so we were using West Rock, I think, back then,
Energy
too.
Consultants,
Yeah, so they were helping with the drilling and helping with the completions, and I was doing more of the development engineering and the economics and stuff. But again, you could fill your plate with like surface land and receptionist and everything else, right? So I think that also just, again, you got to do anything and everything to make a company successful, and I think that's important. It doesn't matter where you're at. If you're on the drilling, like, people will do what it takes to make it successful. I learned a lot of that at that small company, Greenfield, for sure, till 2008.
Yeah, you learn the elements of teamwork and what it takes. And, well, even prior to getting over there, that also showed the value in networking. Yeah. I mean, in your mind, like a lot of we were talking before we got on air about these leagues, like the Rocky Mountain Petroleum Hockey League or the Western Oilmen's Association of Hockey, whatever you call it. We're just playing hockey, but we're also networking. Yeah. And you're hanging out and you're making friends. And so if you hadn't have been a social guy to begin with, I mean, it's a message for kids, really. Like,
you got to get out there.
You got to get out there. You got to talk to people. You got to network, be kind, be humble, listen.
Team sports always
helps. Team sports help. Yeah. So that's, I mean, you wouldn't have gotten that. Well, maybe you would have gotten the opportunity, but it opened doors.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And then to be honest, so on that same hockey team was a fellow named Miles Bosman, and he was one of the founders at Birchcliff.
Oh, no kidding.
So, so Miles, I had met Miles through hockey as well. And so then in 2008, when Greenfield was done, I wasn't necessarily going to go to Harvest. I didn't think that just fit with where maybe I wanted to go. So then I ended up reaching out to Miles, or I can't remember what happened. And then I ended up coming over to Birchcliff in 2008. So right after we sold, maybe a week or two after we sold that Greenfield company.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And then I've been there ever since.
So here you are.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to give a quick shout out actually to Steve Magus. I don't know. I'm not sure if he had heard, but he actually, I don't want to divulge too much because I don't know the full extent of it, but he had, from what I understand, a staph infection in his ear.
Oh, really?
And he actually was either an induced or in some kind of a coma. They had to do a cranial scrape, some kind of infection in his ear.
I did not know that.
Anyway, just a quick thought out to Steve,
for sure.
That's been on everybody's mind lately. So, anyway, so 2008. So what position were you starting at there at Birchcliff?
So at Birchcliff, we had four different sort of assets or asset teams, if you will. So I was one of the development engineers on the central team, and so we were somewhat in the Montney at that time. And we had Charlie Lake assets. We had just purchased the Charlie Lake pool from Harvest, I believe, or Compton. Sorry, it was Compton.
And sorry, I'm going to stop you real quick. Yeah. So the Montney play consisting primarily, oil and gas, primarily gas.
Yeah, most of the stuff we were chasing at that time was gas.
Gas, yeah.
And horizontal drilling, they had just drilled their first horizontal well. And so that was just on the come, and that's one of the reasons Harvest actually bought Greenfield was some of the Slave Point oil was just starting to go horizontal. So
the horizontal kind of came in. That's right, mid
07, 08. Yeah. So right in that time frame, and then they were starting to apply that into the Montney, and that just became wildly successful, and it made its way to other plays as well.
And what zone? So if we want to talk like. When you started going horizontal, so TVD or true vertical depth would be about 3,000 out to...
Where we were was about 2,000, 2,200, somewhere in that range, up in the area we call Pooskoopi and Gordondale, So that was the general context, was go 2,200 down, and which is at that time, I don't know if we were 2,000 out at that time. I can't remember where they were, but...
Yeah, not sure.
So again, just soaking up from a bunch of great people at Birchcliff over the years, and I think that's another... when you look back at all the different spots that you worked or you landed or whatever, like all these whys in the road and decisions you make, but it's a lot about, the mentorship you have as you work through these positions as well from the, in the field to coming to Calgary and Canada.
Yeah.
Lots of great mentorship there, and then even more so even at Birchcliff as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of senior people there to take you under their wings, and I was really fortunate to get all that from the executive team that's there and the founders and a bunch of the senior people over time for sure.
And at that time through your initial years, so sorry, the wife, your
Jill.
wife, Jill. Yeah. Jill, so what would she have been doing during all this
She
time?
was
having fun in the oil and gas sector. What was she doing?
So she took an agriculture degree at U of S. That's originally how I met her.
Okay. Yeah.
And so then in Brooks, she was selling herbicides to some of the Hutterites, and she found a job in Brooks while I was working there as well, and so that was great. And then when we moved to Calgary, then she went and more on the environmental side, so worked for Terra Environmental.
Oh yeah, Terra, yeah.
And then eventually got into environmental sciences and more government policy stuff. She ended up working out in Canada after I left. So yeah.
You just swap jerseys.
Yeah, pretty much.
Hand in, yeah.
And then she worked through all the kids, and then after our third kid, it was we decided that she would stay at home and
that was it. Yeah.
Driving the kids everywhere and organizing.
Chaperoning.
She's a big planner, so she is.
She's a planner.
Oh yeah, yeah. She keeps me on my toes for sure.
How old are the kids now?
So we got
trench there.
Girl, 11-year-old boy, and 9-year-old girl.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are
girl, boy, girl. And you too?
No, well, we have one. We've got our daughter is 6. Obviously, talk about her all the time, but we also have we do have a foster currently.
That's okay.
Yeah, we I'm still learning the system, so I can't disclose a ton. But we got her in November of this year, and she's a fantastic girl. Just had a rough background, as most of them do, and so we're learning the ins and outs of that. But it's
good for you.
Yeah, we just rocked our boat officially because we were going. The one child thing was pretty awesome, pretty nice. We didn't realize how cushy we had it. Right? But
nice and level, and now it's got some waves going.
And now we've got some ripples, but it's been a challenge, but it's been rewarding for sure. So
good for you.
So I just wanted to ask about the fam first, make sure.
No, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sure.
So and then over time there. So you're talking 2008. So how did the positions change over the years? Yeah.
Yeah. So 2008 when I started, my buddies in that central asset. We developed a halfway play, and we were interested in the Montney, and we had an actual Montney team that we called the West team at that time. So then we had a North team that was the Charlie Lake, and then we had an East team that was sort of more the exploration stuff. And over time, I think like a lot of companies, you sort of try and say, okay, what are we focused on? And more of a capital allocation framework of you can't fund everything depending on where the prices are at. So, some assets don't get as much for funding. The Montney was really taking off, so it was attracting a lot more of the capital. So, over time, we restructured some of the teams, and we ended up with a couple teams, and I was in running more of the North team, which was one of our big Charlie Lake assets.
Charlie Lake, yeah.
Yeah. And then over time, we had one of our VPs, our VP of engineering at that time, Karen Pagano, Karen Nielsen now, but she ended up moving from Birchcliff. She moved on over to ARC. Okay. And so there was a job position open in 2013 for the Vice President of Engineering. Yeah. And so in 2013, I moved into that Vice President of Engineering role. Again, fortunate again on the executive team. And so we had Birchcliff has some pretty senior executives with Jeff Tonkin, who was the founder, and Serby, and Miles, Dave, and Bruno. So we had a really well-oiled executive team. So I was really fortunate to join them in 2013, which is it's over 10 years now. I've been part of the Birchcliff executive team. So again, just soaking up now a whole different level of understanding of the industry, right?
Of course.
Versus coming from the operations and the development side. Now you get to see more of the big picture in terms of, debt, strategy, banks, like there's just shareholders, there's a whole other dynamic that's sort of part and part of these exploration and production companies, right? So
you're just learning as you go, and you're just filling up that notebook and bringing it all in. Oh, that's great. I actually enjoyed, have worked with Birchcliff quite a bit in the past, and of course through, Jeff Boswell and Randy Rousson. Randy's still there, right?
Yeah, he retired in this past year, late this year. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't actually know that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but he had Benchmark. He was
Benchmark.
He was a really great guy too.
Yeah, fantastic guy. Yeah. And he used to run two 2 rigs, sometimes 3. I don't think you ever got up to 4 rigs up in there, did you?
At Birchcliff?
At Birchcliff.
Maybe just for a month or 2, but yeah, typically we would have crazy. 3 or 4 out of the gate and then sort of ease it off. And eventually we moved to, and I think the industry as well is, we need to move more of a level loaded program.
Yeah, load leveling. You hear
load
that a
leveling.
lot. Yeah, you hear that a lot in the industry. Yeah.
We always fight over, is it load leveling or level loading?
Level loading.
Like, okay. Whatever.
Yeah.
The job's the same as try and work people consistently over time. And I think that really is a way to spend your capital wisely. And I think that's really the transition there. So you're not up 4 rigs, and safety's a big part of that too. Running 4 rigs and then down to 0 rigs and trying to make these annual numbers. I think it's really more about efficiencies and more about, okay, let's make sure the strategy on how we want to run the business is sound throughout the whole year.
Well, and I think that's a good kind of like a learner for people who don't maybe understand the industry, or even just now we're just talking specifically just drilling alone, but how many people go into one operation, right? So you have one drilling rig, call it a 12-man crew, and they're working 2 and 1, so 2 week on, 1 week off. And then outside of just the drilling crew, you've got your soups and your haulers and your vac truck drivers and all the other services that go into it. And so, yeah, when you mention load leveling, that means, so what Chris means is, so if a rig comes down, let's say we do have a drilling program, let's just simplify it. We're drilling Q1 winter, which is optimal conditions, depending on your operation, whether you're drilling off a pad or not. We don't have to get into that, but if a rig comes down, meaning, okay, we're done our program, you send everybody away. Well, you have the danger, and often do, you lose guys, either other jobs, or they go home to take a break, and then something comes up. Then you mentioned safety factor, so that's, in our day-to-day jobs where you're working, you're paying attention to slips, trips, and falls and hazard hunts, and you're aware of your surroundings. It's also freezing in the winter, minus 40, those conditions. For sure. So you interrupt the fluidity at the rig from a cohesive, type, from an angle, right?
For sure. And you need a bunch more bodies. So, if everyone needs a ton of bodies and then they need no bodies, well, you can get a mixed skill set in there too, versus you got consistent people that are, we say the word green, but a new entrant to the industry versus, hey, now we've got a consistent crew that knows what Birchcliff is about, knows what our expectations are, whether it's on the safety side and the technical side. And because there's certainly a lot of technique, and, companies want to push the envelope to make sure that the wells are being drilled efficiently, but also, you can save costs.
Well, and that's the other thing that's improved, through time and innovation. These deeper wells, which I don't know, again, call it a 5,000 meter well, which used to be 45 days to drill. Awesome for services and vendors. But your spend is here, and now you've got them cut down to 12 days and under.
Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Yeah, and that's horizontal drilling was a big part of that, right?
Huge part. And I think that just speaks to like innovation, just in general. I think that's one of the things that, people have gone to school. Okay, doesn't matter what degree you have, but you've gone to school. That this industry never really stops evolving or never stops innovating. I think that's what keeps people excited. It keeps people motivated and attracted to the industry. And I think that's one thing maybe young people, if you're not in the industry, I had no idea before I came. So I know there's tons of people out there very same or similar, is you don't understand the innovation and the care and attention that everybody has in the sector. And I think that's what really keeps a lot of good people here once you're in. And I think that's one of the things we got to focus on in the future, is how do we continue to attract people?
Well, and it's a problem.
Industry. Right? It's a huge problem. We lucked out in 2022 when prices were, because of the unfortunate entry of the war in Russia and Ukraine, that drove prices way up to $6, $7, $8 per MCF on the gas side. Well, if that would have stayed, we would be desperate for people.
You'd be desperate. Yeah.
Like it did roll off. And to be honest, at that time, the shareholders were focused on shareholder returns versus growth. So instead of piling all your cash flow that you would have made back into the drill bit or into growth, it was going back to the shareholders through dividends or buybacks, or even for us, it was debt repayment.
Right.
Because we had gone through COVID, and then like for our company alone, I think we paid off almost $800 or $900 million of debt in 21 and 22.
That was the focus of a lot of companies. Yeah,
For
it was
sure.
time to clear off the debt. Yep, for sure.
So, but if it would have been gas pedal down on growth, we would be short people. Big
You'd be
time.
short people. Yeah.
And I think it's concerning in the back of our minds anyway when you think about LNG coming on, later this year and into next year, and even more LNG in the U.S. The demand for natural gas, just globally, is increasing. And do we have the people here that can execute on a program if now the balance sheets are tidied all up? If the gas price calls for growth, there's other challenges certainly with regulation, being able to get transportation on TransCanada in a timely manner. Like there's all these other hurdles, but people is certainly a big hurdle for sure.
It's a big one. Well, and if there's anybody out there that even wants to consider the industry, I think it used to be basically, if you looked at the industry, it was like, I'm not going out there because it's dangerous and you could die.
Yeah.
And so the incentive, was all about, more money to attract people. But really, I mean, it's a safe place, and they really hammer on safety out there. And on a drilling rig alone, I was looking at rates just the other day, the CAO EC rates.
Yep.
I mean, a lease hand or a greenhorn or whatever you want to call it, a rookie on the rig, you can make 35 an hour, which works out to like 50 an hour with overtime on a 12-hour tower, 50 an hour. So, I mean, that's fantastic money. The first time, I mentioned it the other day on the podcast, but I used to hear of guys going to work on the rigs and then paying debts off and being smart about it. I mean, it's a great career if you can, and it doesn't have to be drilling. There's service rigs. There's all kinds of other services that we need. We need those people.
Welders,
and it's a safe
pumpers. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I find it's a safer environment out there for sure.
And you require a higher level of skill every year too, right? You need to be trained properly. To your point, we need more skilled workers just across the board.
We do,
right?
Yeah.
So,
well, so for anybody struggling out there, we need you. We need the hands, and get out there and get your ass in the trench, so to speak, and make some money and learn work ethic and respecting and protecting your peers and all that stuff, right?
You bet. And there's lots of great training programs going on as well.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
and subsidies around that too, I'm sure. Because I know our government has recognized that too. I can't remember if I heard it on the radio that we've obviously got a bunch of immigration into Alberta. Big time,
we
right?
do. Yeah,
big time.
For sure.
But if you looked at, I think they had scrubbed down maybe in the last 6 years what the most highly sought after job posting was out there. And it wasn't engineering, it wasn't like those sorts of things. It was actually skilled labor.
Oh, awesome.
Like it was up there by, I think they said the job postings for skilled labor was up like 15%.
Well, we need trades. Yeah, we need people in
100%.
trades. Yeah. I mean, just get back to our roots here.
Sure.
We're getting further and further away.
Things.
Slinging wrenches. Yeah. Okay. So the next step for you, then, you're the VP of engineering for 10 years.
Birchcliff,
at Birchcliff, and then so do you think was this on your radar, being the guy, or do you think it happened organically?
It wasn't really, to be honest. It wasn't. Again, I just wanted to do a great job, and the people I was working with on the executive team, like, I was just learning a ton, right? Yeah. And I really enjoyed it, and I really liked the economics aspect of it. I really enjoyed talking to people as well, in general. So, you know what? What really happened is our chief executive officer, Jeff Tonkin, and this is really kudos to him too, is eventually he wanted to retire. And so, he always wanted a proactive succession plan for Birchcliff to continue on in the future. And I think that's sort of the question when you get to a certain period is like, we're the founders of the company. Are we going to sell the company, or are we setting this company up for the future? Yeah,
what's the long-term goal here?
Right. And so I think kudos to him and the board and the executive team is they realize, we want to set Birchcliff up for the future. We've got great assets. We've got great people. We've got a great culture. Like, everything had been built over the last 20 years. And so, over the last years, Jeff and I started talking about it, and he's like, I'd like for you to be the CEO over time. That's the goal. Whether or not you can do it or not, I don't know. But that's the goal. So we ended up in 2021 Jeff and he split the title of president and CEO, where I became the president,
Mm-hmm.
and then he was the CEO, and that sort of really changed the viewpoint to the market. That
Sure.
Birchcliff was going to continue on,
Mm-hmm.
that, if successful, I would be the successor. And so internally and externally and shareholders and stakeholders, that change really sort of set the process off, if you will, over time. And we had a 2-year transition. And then, as you just mentioned, in January, Jeff's still chair of the board. And then I took the CEO title as well. So that's sort of how it worked out versus, any...
How did that? How did you accept that? Like when you realized this was real and I'm the president, were you? Did you feel like a weight on your shoulders, or were you losing sleep? Like how did you?
A
feel
bit of
about
both.
that?
I think pretty good excitement as well.
Yeah.
And the transition over the last couple of years, we had a couple other executives that were wanting, okay, we're going to retire in the next little while, and we talked about, well, should we do it seamlessly and do it all at once?
Mm-hmm.
And then we can set up the team for the future and move forward. Or what we didn't want to happen is every few years someone's going to retire and we replace them in kind, and it's a bit messy. Like, what the hell is going on over at Birchcliff?
Yeah.
So we really, again, this is all about proper planning, and I think that's one thing we did well, was execute the plan of, hey, here's the goal at the end of 2023 and into 2024, is that we've got an executive team in place, and we had 3 executives retire. And we're all set up now for the future, and the company is moving forward, both internally and externally. I think that really resounded well, right? And I think that just that clarity really helped out. And then, so since January 1st, it's been great. Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
Certainly a big wait, but I think, Jeff and the team done a great job training us in terms of what we need to know. And you got to experience it as well. To make it real, right? Because we, and Jeff's done a great job as well. Is it's hard when you're a founder of the company and you're moving on to be chairman of the board. That's
his baby.
That's his baby. It's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So he's done a great job, and he and I have talked quite a bit about how do we make this successful. And he certainly recognized, and I did as well. If he sticks around in the office and is present all the time, people will just naturally go to him. Right? They'll naturally go to the CEO. And we've seen this in other companies where if it doesn't work well, that's typically one of the challenges is there's no real transfer of actual new executive team to allow them to succeed and have the power, if you will, right? Or not have the power, but make the right decisions, and people understand that it's their responsibility and their call. And so we've really made an effort of that. And Jeff's done a really good job of that so far, just entrusting the executive team with, the decisions and the responsibility, everything else.
Well, it's like, again, go back to the, you guys are, you call yourselves an intermediate size. I mean, you got a market cap of like $1.49 billion. And that's considered intermediate, which is wild about our world. But
I've had people say it's a small. Like, oh, yeah, you're one of the small companies.
Crazy.
And usually it's from the U.S. where they're, their market cap would be, okay, if you're $5 billion or over to 10, you're maybe an intermediate. And puts
it in perspective. Yeah.
But you're right, is, intermediate here, there's not a ton of sub 20,000 BOEs or, BOE a day companies left, to be honest.
No, for sure.
Right. It's a tough go because the wells cost so much now, as you know.
Yeah.
Wells cost a lot.
Yeah.
Barriers to entry as well, especially in the Montney.
Yeah, especially in the Montney. And then there's been a lot of amalgamation or, a lot of mergers and acquisitions and people gobbling up companies and small guys getting scooped up. And there's been a ton of that, right?
For sure there has. Tourmaline's done a great job over time, bottom of the cycle. Kudos to Mike and the team there, for sure. And a lot of them have been private companies that they've scooped up over time as well. So
they know what they're doing. Yeah. It's not their first dance.
No, exactly. So they would be, they got to be over 600,000 barrels a day today. So
yeah, insane.
It's a big company.
It's amazing. And how are you feeling with, we were yapping before we got on the air, like how do you like the getting onto BNN and getting yourself in the spotlight with all that stuff? How are you handling all that?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? It's, I love telling the Birchcliff story. I think we got a good one. So
what a great story.
So that makes it a lot easier for sure. And BNN's always an interesting one. They ask great questions, and you know, you don't get them before, so that's a good thing too. You can't stew on them, and it's not some, you know, garble that you wrote down and you're trying to read it. Yeah, it's sort of on demand, if you will, which has been quite interesting. But you are talking into a bit of a black screen. Right. You can't really see, or you can hear, but you can't see anything. So it was quite an interesting experience when you're actually doing it.
You're truly tap dancing.
Yeah. It's not like this where I can see I'm okay. Kevin's going to ask me a question.
I know where he's going.
I need to back off. Yeah, it's pretty. You know, get your points across and
gotta have the ears open.
Let her cut you off. Yeah, if she wants to ask another question. So, but it was good.
Yeah,
and I've watched Jeff do it a bunch too. So
sure,
that always helps.
Yeah, you got to learn from the best.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
And so I guess we could talk. You know, we'll talk about the future of Birchcliff and all that. But how about you know, stock price? What were you, $5.57 today? So you guys you cut your quarterly dividends. So what was the maybe explain what the focus was there on cutting the quarterly dividends?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So if you rewound back to even if we went back to the end of 2022 and we had been focused on paying off a bunch of debt. So we essentially got rid of our preferred shares that we had, took our debt down to, you know, at the end of 2022, we were, call it $130 million of debt. And so we were in a great financial position. And then we had set that dividend in 2022 at about 80 cents. Well, it was 80 cents a share, $213 million a year roughly. Yeah. And then commodity prices sort of fell away on us in 2023, certainly from where they were in 22. Yeah. So because our balance sheet was so strong in year end 22, we had lots of room on there to make sure that dividend went and was paid to our shareholders for sure. We were focused on that. And then as we moved to 2024, in November, we ran our budgets, and of course, we're planning the budget essentially in April 23 for 24. As you know, got to be good lead time on all this stuff. So the teams are all busy on that. We come out in November, and based on the commodity prices in November 23 for 2024, it looked like we could fund our capital program and pay that $213 million dividend and still have probably $70 million of cash, excess cash, right? Yeah. So that was November. Then all of a sudden from November to January, just prices tanked. We had no winter.
Tanked. Yeah.
We had no winter.
It's a weird winter.
Oh, yeah. So you had no winter. Storage was not drawn down. Even today, storage is quite full. U.S. gas production was peaking. Yep. So it was just this trilemma that drove the natural gas price down. So when we came to January and the board and the executive team and we looked at it and we said, okay, well, let's make sure we're not taking on too much debt by the end of 24. Yeah. Because that's the only thing that can hurt an energy company and any company really is you have too much debt.
Yeah, you can't don't count your britches and
too much debt and you end up with COVID or you end up with like some issue that some black swan event. Yep. You don't want to be there, and there's no need to be there. No. So what we did was we took a real hard look at what do we think a sustainable dividend is for the future, pay it in 2024 and execute our capital program. And then 25, 26, 27, we could pay that dividend, fund our capital program to grow the business over time and still have some money, excess cash flow we call it, money over and above to either reduce the debt and or fund. We have a large future development area called Elmworth, and it's in the Montney as well, but it's pretty much 150 square miles of mineral rights that's undrilled. Okay. And so that's sort of the future of the company.
You've got that in the books. Yeah.
Yeah. So for us, it's like, well, we want to start funding on that as well with that excess free cash. So that's sort of how we came up with the 40 cents per share, which happened to be half of where we were at. Sure. And so in January, we made that decision that, let's get ahead of it. We'll do that now. And we'll reduce the dividend from that 80 cents to the 40 cents. And now we know we're sustainable for the future and can fund what we want to fund to grow the company and fund that Elmworth asset as well. So that was sort of the thought process.
Smart. I think it's a smart decision. Yeah. How was the shareholder response on that?
I think most of the shareholders that own the stock, they would rather own it for the long duration. And I mean that of let's do what's right for the business and don't take that debt up to somewhere where anyone else can influence the business. Yeah. Right. Whether it's the banks or anyone else, when you have too much debt, don't go there. There's no need to. Yeah. Right. So I think it was positive in that sense of prudent management of the business and move forward.
And what do you see? What are you guys forecasting for wells? I think you did.
We do about 30 this year.
Do about 30 wells, and I want to say you did like 44 or something in 22.
Yeah, probably just under that.
Just under. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've been around. Like one of the things we've done is the company's been relatively flat.
Yeah.
In terms of production over the last 4 or 5 years, and that really goes back to shareholders are wanting a cleaner balance sheet. They're wanting cash returned to them.
Yeah.
Versus growth. And so we did a good job over the last 4 or 5 years of following that strategy. Right, we have the potential to grow. We have a gas plant that has some capacity in it. We have capacity on the Trans-Canada main line. So if you said gas was $4 or $5 in 25, for instance, well, we can grow faster than what we put out to the market. But we want a conservative plan that follows generally a reasonable gas price. But if things go crazy again, well, we'll be one of the first ones that can grow because we already have a bunch of infrastructure and transportation existing.
Everything's already set.
It's already there. And it actually reduces all our cost structure.
Sure.
Because we're already paying for it. We got all the operators.
No, that's exciting. Yeah, exciting times. But I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on this emissions cap and that the federal government is trying to impose, and I think they want to implement it by 26 is of course right after the election. They're gonna hang their hat on all that. But what are your
I you know what, you can certainly sense that the current government their desire is to restrict or try and shut down the industry over time. That's sort of the general mandate. I think we had a pretty big win with Bill C-69.
Yeah, that was a big win,
right,
for sure.
So we got jurisdiction, and that's really kudos to a bunch of the associations we have in Calgary and Alberta, and also our government of Alberta as well. Just really standing up for our own right to produce oil and gas or energy out of our province. Yeah. So kudos to all those associations, all those groups. We're part of writing letters as well. So I'm glad that held up. But it's again now you deal with the emissions cap, the clean energy regulation. We have methane reduction policy and guidelines. So there's just one large policy after another being thrown out into the air essentially. Because a lot of these things, I think, after what we do is that, again, it goes back down to what jurisdiction does the province have versus the federal government. And
they're really challenging that. It's like they want the fight. And, part of the reason why I like doing this here is we can talk it out rationally because we understand our industry. But, by them, and it's like they don't even consult like our people. When you look at everything that we've done, like our industry globally, is the largest investor in clean technology. It's like currently $3 billion. Just our energy, and that's not because of anything that's been put on us. That's us already investing into that organization. For anybody that wants information on the energy sector, I encourage them to go to cap.ca or Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers. We have to report all these stats. These are true stats. You can't fudge your numbers, and they've got your sources for data from Stats Canada and et cetera. But our industry has really been the leader on the environmental aspect. And meanwhile, our emissions on a global scale, like people say it, but it's right there, your stats. We're at like 1.5%. We account for global emissions, Canada.
Yeah.
It's insane to me what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think it's, goes back to competitiveness as well. Like if you want to have a competitive industry and you want to attract capital, if those are your goals, and it's clearly not the goals of our federal government today for that, but it should be, we should be developing our resources before anyone else. Like that is for sure a no-brainer in our mind. Look at the regulations, look at the all the different things the AER has with respect to policies, regulations that we have to follow. It's got to be second to none. I know there's jurisdictions that come to the AER to ask for, hey,
Alberta Energy Regulator.
Yeah, sorry.
That's
the Alberta Energy Regulator.
Yeah.
That really has done a great job regulating what we have, which means our molecule has got to be one of the cleanest, safest, and most efficient around. So if you took the government policy and flipped it around to a proactive one in our minds, Well, now we have the ability then to get those molecules, the molecule being natural gas or oil or whatever it is, a hydrocarbon molecule, get that to overseas, especially the LNG. I think that's one thing we're really excited about.
Yeah.
Because it's got 50% less emissions than coal.
Yeah, yeah.
So, when you think about clean LNG coming off the BC coast, we're finally going to be there. Like, knock on wood, it's actually finally going to happen after 15 years of talking about it. So I think the basin, I say the whole Western basin here, is pretty excited about seeing that day when that first cargo gets lifted off the coast and set sail for Asia or wherever it's going to go.
Wherever it's got to go. I
think that'll be really big, but I think there's more projects to do there. And again, that then displaces coal. It's not Canadian emissions, but it's we all are share the same. There's no bubble over Canada. The bubble is we all are in the same globe. So
it's global. Yeah, we've all got our own responsibility.
Yeah, 100%. So I think that's a huge emission savings. And you've seen the U.S. reduce their emissions. Like, if you look at the globe, the only people that have reduced their emissions since we've signed up on all these accords is the U.S. And it's all been nat gas replacing coal on their power gen. That's how they have reduced emissions nonstop.
It's pretty, it's there. The proof is in the data, right? It's LNG is where,
for sure,
where you're going to have your biggest emissions reduction.
Yeah. And so we're part of a project. So the Shell project, or the LNG Canada project's great. It's Shell, Mitsubishi, Petronas, KOGAS, and PetroChina. So it's a lot of foreign nationals that are moving their gas out and using it. And they're big entities.
Yeah, they are big entities.
But you know what? Over the last number of years, our founder, Jeff Tonkin, was a big part of this. And Marty Proctor at 7Gen. But we formed Rockies LNG, which is a Canadian group of producers that have pooled their gas together. So, and I'll get into some of those members because it continues to grow and build momentum. Awesome. But that Rockies LNG group is saying, hey, we're willing to supply gas to an LNG project. So over time, that's evolved into the Rockies LNG group, partnering with Western LNG, which is the ex-CFO of Cheniere. He's got Western LNG, whose sort of his mandate, or their mandate, is to build a floating LNG facility. And then we got the Nisga'a First Nation as sort of the third piece of that project. And the project is called Silisms LNG. Yeah. So it's a sort of made in Canada solution, if you will, where we've got, Birchcliff, Peyto. I think we got 12 members now, and there's some big ones in there.
You say Peyto as well? Yeah.
Birchcliff, Peyto, Nuvista, Paramount. We got Tourmaline in there now, Crescent Point. So we got some Oventive. We got some big players in there now with some big balance sheets and a bunch of gas production. And so that, I guess, aggregation of supply really then says, well, how do the Canadians get their gas overseas and get world price for it? And some bigger companies, ARC and Tourmaline, have made some deals to the one of them, I think ARC had signed something to the West Coast through the LNG Canada, but the other, Tourmaline and ARC, have both signed deals down to the Gulf Coast to try and access Tidewater and get a world price, right? Yeah. Smaller pieces of the production, but generally we need to get world price, because don't forget, we're all Albertans. Yeah. Cool. And the royalties that get paid are based on what the Alberta price is.
That's right.
Doesn't matter where the gas goes today.
No, it doesn't matter, it's
right? Like, we send gas to the U.S., we send gas to Dawn in Ontario, but it's all, the royalties are calculated on the AECO Alberta spot price. And so if that doesn't change, Alberta's not making their fair share.
No.
So
again.
Where's we need transport.
That's right, we need transport. Where's the that floating LNG station? Where's that slated?
So it's on the Nisga'a First Nation, which is right on the it'll be right on the Nass River, which is right at the very top of BC, right on the border of Alaska.
Okay.
So it's an inlet there where that floating LNG facility would be located. Yeah. And that project continues to build momentum. So the consortium announced that we have signed a 2 MPTA, or a million tons per annum agreement with Shell Eastern Trading for offtake. So they've agreed to buy 2 million tons per annum, which is, the facilities, call it 1.7 BCF a day. It produces 12 million tons per annum total. Yeah. So we've signed 2 of it on an offtake agreement. And really,
that's excellent.
We got to build more of those offtake agreements. That will help then finance the project. Because you can show that you've got sales agreements. You can use that then to help build the facility and build that pipeline.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it goes, but it's got a bunch more momentum from an idea 6 years ago.
Takes time.
From Jeff and Marty, from an idea, and it's really been
finally coming to fruition.
Yeah, hope so.
Well, and you mentioned you said the Siska Nation, right?
Niska.
Niska, sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
Niska.
It just made me think of obviously Birchcliff, and I had some experience with you guys as well. That you guys work very closely and have some good relationships and joint ventures with various Indigenous groups from Duncan Lake to
Duncan, Horse Lake.
Horse Lake. Yeah.
Work quite closely with them, and there's some other Métis nations that we work quite closely with. And Andy Fulford, one of our surface land manager, really has done a great job on that file, and Jim Serby as well, setting that up right from the beginning. And I think that's a positive of when you look at where Birchcliff has evolved to now. We've got that focused Pouskoupi Gordondale area.
Yeah, and Gordondale's like GP essentially, right?
Yeah, they're both like these areas are just bang right on the border, about an hour and a bit northwest of GP, right on the border. But they're a focused land area where we own and control everything from the roads to the infrastructure to the oil batteries. There's one gas plant we don't own, which is the AltaGas gas plant, but we have our own Pouskoupi Gordon gas plant, 340 million cubic feet a day. So, and then we have this Elmworth property, which is only maybe 20 miles south of this Pousk Gordondale asset. So really it's that focus that allows us then to, we know we are where we are. We've been in this same area for 20 years. We know the community. Our operators live in the community.
Yeah, you've had boots on down there for a long time.
100%, right? And this goes back to the executive team at the beginning. They founded these relationships with the First Nations, the community, stars, all these things right from the beginning. So it's been a huge luxury for us.
I imagine it's well received from an Indigenous perspective on their end. I know, again, federal government likes to spin it like we're hurting some of these bands and nations, but I mean, we're out here. All we see is them wanting to be involved and wanting to not be missed on these big projects, right?
For sure. And further employ, further educate their communities. So it's good for all of us, for sure.
It's a positive thing. Yeah, I think it's great, setting them up for success. All right. Well, I think we beat it up pretty good, but where do you see, I guess, next 5-10 years for Birchcliff, and where do you see the industry next 5-10?
Yeah, I think for Birchcliff, we got a pretty solid plan A, which is, grow the company to 90,000 BOEs a day with everything that we have that we're talking about, existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then we've got that Elmworth asset that really ties into somewhere between 27 and 2029, where we'll start to develop that asset, build a gas plant down there, and essentially take all the technical expertise we've built in that Pousk Gordondale asset, bring it down there, and you could almost see doubling the company if you start to really develop that asset over time. So we've got a great inventory of locations. We got tons of resource. It's just a question of, what gas price environment are we in?
Yep.
And what's the sentiment for growth? And we can make that happen for sure.
Well,
and get money back to our shareholders. I mean, it's been a tough road. We sort of skipped over because 22 is good, but it's been a tough road for the last number of years for gas producers, right? So
well, I know a handful of gas producers that have not had any drilling program for years now.
Sure,
right? The smaller, if we're going to talk smaller guys, where they're just working on abandonments versus any drilling program because they can't justify it, right?
Yeah, and from the marketing side, I mean, the ability to have a dividend, and as you know, we run unhedged, so we don't lock in the gas price. Yeah, really, what allows us to do that is the strong balance sheet, own and operate everything, so you can control your pace of development, and then our marketing diversification. So we have gas going to Dawn, 40%. We got gas tied to NYMEX, 40%, and then we've got maybe 20% at ACO. So that diversity of sales points also helps out. And if LNG gets into the mix into the future, I think that would be a great thing as well.
Well, there's no business case for LNG.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So JT said to the German chancellor. Right?
Yeah, as they're here starving for gas.
They're just starving for gas.
No, that's frustrating.
It is very frustrating from that standpoint. I wanted to reiterate for people that listen to do your research, listen to the energy experts, and go on to CAP, cap.ca. There's a couple other resources that are pretty good. Who are some of the other ones?
Yeah, Canada Action has a pretty good website with data. Yeah.
Stating their
EPAC's
sources.
got some stuff, but CAP has made a real effort to take the data, make it easy to read, non-bias, non-partisan, like it's full-on actual data. So if you're interested in all that, great. I'd say the other thing too is just everything you hear. If policy after policy is coming out, you got to take all this stuff with a grain of salt and think for yourself a little bit about what you use for energy every day. Where does it come from? And I think we're pretty fortunate now that most people, we don't have to do that. Everything just works.
Everything works. Well, and we've never plugged in more things in our lives.
Yeah,
right? Like
energy demand's crazy.
Look around this room, all the gadgets and things we run, and which are made from oil and gas, by the way, plastics and
and it's human nature that we make things more efficient.
Yeah,
but we don't use less energy. We just end up using more.
We use more.
It's a very interesting dynamic, but a lot of good books on that too. Human nature and the psychology, which I'm not a psychologist. But
me neither.
Anyway,
I pretend to be when I have the mic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really just for me.
They gotta listen to you. Yeah.
Therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's it. I think that covers it pretty good. Unless you want to hammer on something else, if there was something you really wanted to get out there. Just excited to see where you guys are going to take this thing, and best of luck to you in the future. You're 3 months in on as the face of the company. So
now we got a great team, and I think that's
awesome team.
That's all that really matters is you got a great team, great people, and great assets, and have the right strategy, and it'll all come home. So
I think company's in good hands.
Hey, appreciate that.
Look forward. We'll see you on the ice. I'll throw you a big elbow.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks a lot for having us, Kev.
We'll see you again.